for us as a bank, we've identified this area, and right now, we're in the process of investigating, how we can support the skills development in that area. So there is a certain number of students that we're looking at to peg down, but I don't want to reveal anything yet. But it's a space to watch, where we would be providing, access to the courses that might be needed in order to be an accredited installer. Secondly, practical experience with a qualified installer, where you get on the hands, on the job work experience. So you get the practical experience. And then finally, that the dream is for that particular individual to now have a decision to whether be employed by that business, that way he did his practicals, or alternatively, in the long run, if he wants to pursue setting up his own energy business, he can speak to our enterprise development division, where we assist customers in the startup phase in providing them with access to funding and business bank account and all other financial instruments.
Allow me to give away things. First question, quickly. Bag, first question.
Oh, you got a bag?
Yeah, I'm giving a bag away. First question. Are you guys clear with what?
I think we have a question for the gentleman there. No, but you were asking a question about a question.
First question that you guys want to know about?
Okay, we have one with the lady on the left.
Yes, ma'am?
Thank you. I just want to find out, did you say the opportunity is open for Cape Town first, or did I get that incorrect?
No, we haven't decided on a province yet.
Oh, okay.
We're still doing that exercise. But, because of our hub being in Johannesburg, chances are we're probably going to start in Gauteng first.
Okay.
But the intention would be able to replicate the model to be spread throughout the country.
All right. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, that's a very good question.
Yes.
Second question. Yes, ma'am?
Good day, everyone. My name is Puselezo Makhadi, the founder of Passionate Gashi Chicks Foundation. And I would like to know, how does one who is interested enroll in this program, seeing that it's a very, very good opportunity for many of us? Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Puselezo Makhadi.
Okay, Ms. Makhadi. We haven't yet bedded down the principles. As I mentioned to you, this is still in the early stages of formation. But on a high level, we'll be looking at individuals who were obviously previously disadvantaged, and individuals who generally have the right, mindset in order to invest in themselves and grow themselves.
Oliver, let me ask you, everybody here is previously disadvantaged. Yeah. So what does that mean?
So if you previously disadvantaged is a person who doesn't have access to, opportunities in the past, in terms of education, in terms of job opportunities, and I don't want to put a specific, criteria in terms of gender or ethnicity to it, but basically what we're looking for is individuals, if I can put it very in layman's terms, Tumelo, my dream, or Standard Bank's dream, more importantly, which is my dream because I work for Standard Bank, is that we want to target the individual who's now doesn't have an opportunity, right? Our unemployment rate is at alarming rates.
Yes.
But that young individual who does not have an opportunity to get a job has got an opportunity to rather look at getting involved in a program with skills development through Standard Bank to give them a career in.
Ma'am, in short, that is 80% of South Africa qualifies.
Sure.
So here's your bag. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Afternoon. My name is Zakiti. My question is, do you have any, are you in partnership with any other stakeholders with regards to this specific program?
So, as I mentioned to you, this program is still at early stages, and I'm not at liberty to disclose that information on this platform yet. But watch the space. We will be advertising on our website very soon.
Sagiti, thank you very much for asking that question and getting clarity. We are now moving swiftly to the car. We've given bags away. We are creating appetite. We are now moving to the car.
I think before we, I don't know how much time we have, Tumelo, but before we wrap up,
2 minutes.
Yeah, one more point I'd like to make is around what we are looking for very actively as a bank is suppliers. Suppliers in the form of solar installers. So we've got currently 76 accredited suppliers with us, but we want to grow this sector very aggressively with businesses that have the right principles and integrity by delivering a product and a solution to our customers. So I encourage all of you who are looking to at renewable energy as a business to pursue. Go to investigate, research it, speak to us about it, how you can get involved in the sector. And, businesses that are still quite brand new entering this market, we can show you the path that you could possibly look at pursuing on the long term in order to get into it. But our goal is to at least have about 700 suppliers in the very near future.
And right now you have how many?
76.
76, and you want to get 10 times that amount.
Correct, because we've got about
Opportunity.
7,000 suppliers
Opportunity.
across South Africa, and 10% of that is only 700. So we're estimating that's the goal that we want to try and grow to. So 100% opportunities there.
Oliver, they will catch you during the, are you leaving now?
No, I'll be sticking around.
Okay, networking session, Oliver, opportunity. Don't say Kataba didn't give you the playing field to go out there and make it happen. Thanks, but
Thank you very much.
cool. Swiftly moving. And we're gonna get, can I just, somebody get the mic for me? Thank you. Thank you. So we're gonna get Minky Tulo on stage. Minky is a business coach, Harvard alumni, media and broadcasting exec. She's now in the space of coaching and helping leaders and business owners grow. So we're gonna have a quick crash course with her, see what works, and then she's there available outside to help you with your business. Minky, can we just jump on stage and let's
Thank
make
you.
things happen?
Sure. Hello, everyone.
Minky, quickly,
Tell me.
why do I need a coach?
Well, I guess no one goes to the Olympic without a coach. No one reaches the Olympic as a sportsman and wins the Olympic without a coach. So business coaching is no different.
All right.
And I think most often the question asks that what then qualifies someone to be a business coach. And one principle for me is that you have to have been in the thick of things. So I myself am an entrepreneur. I've worked with various esteemed entrepreneurs in the country and within the continent, and have taken business from paper to launch into the market. So all those expertise, in fact, is what ended up getting me to be called in to be a coach by request by the industry. But we all need a coach, because with a coach, you have an accountability partner who's going to make sure that you are clear about the way you want to go. So if we're going to the Olympic, let's be clear what we need to do to get to the Olympic, and how much we need to adjust our diets, how much we need to exercise. So for me as a business coach, I'm there to be your thinking tank, your visionary partner, and your execution partner.
Cool. Our theme today is nuggets, quick frameworks that work, that make things easy.
Sure.
So do you have something for us that our delegates can look at?
Yeah, I think
And we can work.
there's a slide, if you can just put that up for us.
Because we want things that work, guys. Quick stuff that I can do tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So can we get something up?
And when I say I'm a business coach, I'm a business growth coach. So there are 4 principles that I use to in approaching this. One, the key thing is about you, the leader. The business is as efficient as you keep on developing yourself, and you as efficient as you are as a leader in leading others. One, if you don't keep developing your leadership skills, and then you become a lid on your business. You basically set up the lid onto your business. Also, the things to think about as a leader is that, are you doing the things that are more strategic in growing your business? In your business. So are you stuck into the day-to-day of the business, versus are you doing the strategic stuff on your business?
But Minky, I'm the only entrepreneur or only person in the business.
Sure.
I just got myself a company document, CK form, I don't know what it's called nowadays.
Yeah,
That's all I've got.
yeah.
How do I separate operational and strategy?
So we talk about the 4 quadrants.
All right.
First, identify what are the important things, but that are not urgent in your business. And those are the things that are more strategic. I need to be able myself to grow the business. If you're the only one operating in the business, don't get caught up into the day-to-day all the time, where you're answering other people's demands. People say this is urgent, it's not necessarily urgent, and you keep on shifting your schedule because of that.
Okay.
If you decide to spend 3 hours in an entire week, where you're saying, I'm going to focus on the strategic things in my business. You literally have a month's worth of strategic work that you're doing in your business,
Right.
which will ultimately start freeing you from getting stuck in the operation stuff. Do the operational stuff, spend 3 hours where you are uninterrupted looking at the strategic things in your business.
So I've set direction, I've done the operational excellence, I'm running as a leader, how do I win?
So the winning part, and allow me to. So we started with you, the leader, but I want
Yes.
us to be clear about what setting direction is.
Please.
And I guess it's as simple as if I'm going to Cape Town, or if I'm saying I'm taking a trip, but I'm not clear where I'm going. If I'm clear and I say I'm going to Cape Town, I'm clear to say I'm going to take a flight when I'm driving. I need to then know where I'm going to stay, and all of those things. So in business, the context is start with the end in mind. I'm getting into business to build a business that looks like this, that people respect for this, that will be known in the market for this. And start understanding between the business that you ultimately want versus to where you are currently. What are the gaps and what are the steps? And that's the coaching process,
All right.
right? We get where you want to go, we get an assessment to understand where you, and we start giving you tools and the steps of how do you close the gap to get there.
And
Right?
then- correct.
So once you've gotten the steps of how, and the direction of where we're going, we talk about the operational efficiencies,
Okay,
right?
simple terms, what is that?
Simple terms is that how do you prioritize the right things, do them consistently with great quality, and be able to hand them over to the next people that are going to take over your business.
All right.
That's if you're building a business that is going
You
to
want a
outgrow you.
legacy
And it's a
business.
legacy
Yeah.
business, right? In operational efficiencies, for instance, I was telling one of the ladies yesterday that sometimes we complicate things about how people can make quick revenue improvements or profit improvements. I want to tell you about this formula where it says 1 + 1 + 1 = 19, right? If
1
you
plus 1
plus
plus
1
1
equals 19, right?
Let's hear what's 19. Tell us what's
So
19.
if you're making a revenue of 1 million, improve your revenue by 1%, it means you're improving it by 10,000.
Yeah.
If your cost of expenses are 500,000, reduce them by 1%. It means you're reducing them by 5,000.
Yeah.
Just to give you context about how small the numbers are.
Yeah.
And if you reduce your expenses by 1%, your expenses are sitting at like 400,000. Automatically, immediately, you've made a profit improvement of 19%.
Wow. Somebody help me. I'll find you during the break. Do the calculation for me. I'll see you in the break.
So without frustrating entrepreneurs as well, it's like, let's start at the beginning. You need to demonstrate to funders that you are able to grow your business. Do you
Sorry,
understand?
Minky. Let's go back.
Okay.
I think this is a nugget that needs to be. Please say it again. If you 1 + 1 + 1 = 19.
Yes.
So
So
what
you-
does that mean? Because I think, I think guys missed it like I did.
Okay,
I
so
want them
let,
to be clear so that they leave here with that formula. Pens are out, something's out. I want to.
so let's and someone calculate this, right? You've got R1 million as your revenue. You've got your cost of sales as 500,000, and you've got your expenses as 400,000. So I'm saying, if I say to you add 1% to your revenue, how much are you adding? Right? And then I'm saying, I can see she's quickly punching the numbers.
He wants to see.
Then I say to you, so remember, if you're looking on the one side, if we've said you've got a 1 million, right?
Yes, correct.
You've minus your expenses of 500,000. You've minus your cost of sales. How much are you left with? 100,000, right?
Yeah.
100,000, okay? I'm looking onto it to make sure if she's with me. So where you started, you've made a profit of 100,000. So if I say if I apply the same process, you've got 1 million, I said add 1% onto it, right? Then minus 1% of your cost of sales, which would have been 500,000. In this case, 1% is 5,000. Then when we get to your expenses, you've got 400,000, right? I'm saying lessen your expenses by 1%, which means you are lessening them by 4,000.
By 4,000.
So 10 plus 5 plus 4 equals to 19. And literally, depending on your numbers, your personal numbers in the business, it will result in an immediate 19% in profits.
That's a nugget. You can. That's all we want.
That's it.
all we want.
Right?
Simple stuff that you can go home with and check. I'm selling 3,000 magunya a day. For one rent is 3,000. I spend so much. Minus 1%, I'm winning, right? Simple stuff.
Thank you.
So
Yeah?
So just on that nugget, let's close up and wrap up
Yeah.
and say, going forward, what is needed for them to then succeed?
What's
Needed to succeed. You've done this model, it works, everything is checking out. What is the next step now to building a winning team?
The next step to winning a team really is getting the right people in the right seats, doing the right things consistently. Right? So just saying, I have a team. Sometimes I say to people, okay, you know where you're going, right? But are the team members that you are either collaborating with or that you've employed have got the skills and are in the right places in your business to get you to where you're going? So, and this often happens that businesses either outgrow their leaders or they outgrow their teams. Obviously, when we start in the beginning, we're just like, oh my gosh, I don't have money to pay anyone, so I'm just going to deal with whoever I need to, right? But ultimately, you have to be very rigorous and aware when your business starts outgrowing you as a leader and also your team. And also, there's nothing wrong with your business outgrowing you as a leader. Because ultimately, if you are building a legacy business, you have to be able to say, this is beyond me, and I need to get in someone else in the business who would be able to grow it for me.
Mickey, thank you.
Thank you.
Networking session 3 to 5. Mickey's here. It's a question.
Thank you, Minky. I think you are forgetting to tell the entrepreneurs in here that you provide this solution so they can come to you in the breakaway room, which is closer to the exit, to do the masterclass, get information, and maybe have the contact as our Minky so that we can start this program going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey.
Yeah.
1 + 1 + 1 equals 19. I will not forget that one.
Simple, right? Quick and easy.
I will reference you wherever I go. 1 + 1 + 1 equals 19. Sure. Moving forward swiftly, let me remind you that we're here on the ticket of Coke, giving you nice beverages to just quench your thirst, that we're able to Wi-Fi away, because Vodacom came through for us, that Standard Bank continued to be here with us, that if you ask questions, Mercedes-Benz will give you a weekend worth of sheer pure driving of an electric car for the weekend to go to KLIK with, without being bothered. And we're thanking Motors for having Jeep, for having given our speakers shared drive to the airport and back. And that's why we're here, guys, right? So I see we are packed in front. Questions? So we can have a whole panel here, 2 of them. That's 2 opportunities to get this car. Are we in? Okay, can we just do one demonstration? of hands up. So let's all pick up our hands on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, no, we must train the muscles. Again, 1, 2, 3. Last one, 1, 2, 3. That's how you win the car for the weekend. Is raise up your hand, ask a question, and you win. On that note again, my rock star of panels, are you ready? Are you ready, my rock star of panels? So on stage now, we're going to welcome on stage Tokyo, Director of Tokyo and Jela Attorneys. In everything you do, you need a lawyer, guys. You need, no, forget a lawyer, you need an attorney who will advise you properly. In any deal you go into, in any issues of regulations you go into, you need an attorney who knows what they're doing. So Tokyo is here for that, to give us that view. Secondly, we've got Zakiti from Green Grass. Is it ESG? Yes. She's getting herself ready. We're looking forward to hear from you now shortly. Chico, what former CFO? Sorry? Director of Sasol South Africa Limited. So she's also going to be on stage now. But the key driver here is our rock star, Nicolette. Please give it up. We'll have two sessions, this one and the next one. So, my co-driver.
Thank you.
Let us move.
Thank you, thank you. Okay. I gotta cut up with feathers. We're about to rock the session, right? So can my panelists please come on stage? Guys, we're now going to talk about regulation. We're going to talk about the future of renewables. And we're going to talk about a little bit of energy technology. Let's get a better understanding of how can we create efficiencies within the energy sector, but in the context of our businesses. So if you're trying to get into that business, I think one of the things you do need to do, and if you were here yesterday, the conversation moved around, I remember Karida saying, when my business is at phase 1, it does not matter how fancy your tech is if it's not going to give me the profits that I'm looking for. So we're going to put a challenge on the two panelists that are sitting here to explain to us what are some of the regulations that exist that are hindering any type of breakthrough for small-scale energy entrepreneurs. We're going to try and have a conversation around, when we talk about renewable energy, I mean, we here in South Africa, it's a coal versus renewable. Where are we going to? Because load shedding is a reality of South Africans. But I think when you're on the ground and you're not in those higher up conversations, you often miss what the real issue is and how can we actually go around it. So, panelists, welcome.
Thank you.
Are you guys feeling good?
Very good. Yeah.
Good.
Good.
All right. I think it's quite important for us to get, maybe we'll start off with yourselves, Agiti, to just get a clear understanding. When we talk about renewable energy, what is that?
Thank you very much, Nicolette, for the question.
Just give me a second. Let's quickly test your mic. Can you count to 10 for me too?
1, 2, 3. Can you hear?
Can you please give us support by increasing her volume? Try again for me.
1, 2, 3.
Much better. You can go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. As I have been introduced, my name is Zakiti Zama. End of October last year, I sort of retired from the corporate sector. I now manage my own consultancy, which is Greengrass ESG, having spent just over 3 decades on extractives industry, which is mining as well as oil and gas. And I felt that at the phase of my life where I can be on the other side of the table and support companies that are in mining as well as in oil and gas with ESG strategy formulation as well as execution. Your question, Nicolette, about renewable energy, it's all about the energy sources that are sustainable and they are healthy to the environment. As you all know that currently when it comes to electricity generation, it's mainly around coal. Pat mentioned this morning, and we have made certain commitments as a country in terms of sustainable development, and we are a signatory on the Paris Agreement in that we will decarbonize our industry, and we made commitments that we will achieve net zero in about 30 years' time. So that's what renewable energy is all about. It's all about those sustainable resources of energy that we can utilize as the country. It can be wind, it can be solar, it could be hydro. But I think I'll stop there, Nicolette, and hopefully later on you do ask me about oil and gas, which is a subject that I'm very passionate about.
I'll ask you to right now. I'm going right now, go. And perhaps maybe I won't ask it in the directness that you are looking for. What I'd like to speak about is we often hear that Africa contributes a very small percentage to climate change. Perhaps take us through what is the impact of the energy sector on climate change, and what is the future? What does it look like? What should it look like?
Thanks for that question. I think we must also understand that Africa, we have energy poverty. And we need to diversify our energy sources so that we can power the continent. So let's not run away from that. And a strong energy country requires that diversification. It has to be there. However, having said that, historically, fossil fuels are not friendly to the environment. That we do know. However, there have also been technologies in terms of when you do the extraction, how can you do it in an environmentally friendly way? I mean, if you look at what is happening in the Highveld and the air quality issues that are there, we need to be there and help both companies and communities manage the air quality standards in the areas where they are performing. So in short, the impact is there, but it can be managed.
Okay.
And that is one space I always say that our young people need to study environmental management and focus on energy issues. How can we help the government? How can we help society manage the environmental impacts of energy development?
I like that. And I'm going to stay with you for just a little while still. You spoke about tech efficiencies that are available to minimize the impact. Take us into confidence of just one example.
You know, when you do risk management, especially in the extractives, in most cases, there will be an impact there. So now once we have identified the impact, how do you manage or how do you mitigate that impact that you could cause? A simple question, maybe let me, although onshore is not my strong point, my colleague here at Tokyo is an expert on onshore. Maybe if I may touch on that, in that there is a well that you have identified as a gas company. You want to drill that well. And that well is closest to a wetland. How do you then manage that aspect, make sure that whatever activity that you are doing minimizes the impact? And if it is not avoidable, how do you then mitigate? And there's a whole lot of process in terms of environmental authorization where you will tell the regulator that these are the likely impacts and how are you going to mitigate? You have to convince the regulator that you are going to mitigate that. And firstly, maybe you recommend that you move away from that area. You look for another place where you can drill, where there'll be minimal impact in the environment. Sometimes it means you have to move people because certain people are not comfortable staying closest to operations. You have to move people. Government recently issued regulations in terms of how do you manage relocation of people. And there are many other international human rights standards that you can always refer to in terms of when you have to move people, what are the basic aspects that you have to look into. And maybe quickly, Nicolette, in that, you know, when it comes to stakeholder engagement in energy projects or even mining, there are opportunities. I've never been without a job. Even now, I still have companies calling on me to come and help them on stakeholder engagement because I've become, I don't want to say an expert. The whisperer. I'm one of the few executives in that space. So it's up to you to go out and read and learn about the industry. And stakeholder engagement, it is big in the extractives industry. We can never say that we have enough practitioners in that field. You have to come in, understand the space, and see where you can play in. Departments, environment, water affairs, mineral resources, as well as the energy companies. They do need practitioners in that space because, yes, our environment, our industry has become litigious. So you need someone who can come in, understand both sides of the table, and be able to come up with win-win solutions. Because when it comes to development, you can never say the winner takes all. You have to find common ground. And that's one of the strongest aspects of me that I have, in that I help companies come up with win-win solutions. Thank you.
I absolutely love it. I think from your response, Zakiti, what I really do appreciate is you've given us an example that we can cling on, right? So to just bring it down to everybody, I want us to use the example of drilling a well, right? That's the example we're going to use. So we're going to try and move this conversation around that because I think it's something that we can all mentally picture. Now, Tokyo, Zakiti has spoken a little bit about the need then for stakeholder relations before you go in, whether it's in a community or it's in a land that is close to water, whichever direction we can move in. Are there real implications, real legal implications, if I do this without necessarily going through the process of stakeholder relations, and I do maybe cross the line somewhere?
Thank you, Nicolette, for that question, and thank you for inviting me once again to be a panel speaker in this event. I'm Tokyo Nkela, managing partner of Tokyo Nkela Attorneys Incorporated, where we primarily operate within the mining and energy space. In terms of your question, community consultation is very important.
Okay.
And if there's evidence of you not having engaged with the community, you'll be held accountable by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. But it's also important that when you engage with the community that there is documentation, there are meeting minutes, there's a register that is signed. Because a lot of people, when they enter the space, they don't understand the importance of documenting things.
Yeah.
There being contracts in place. Because, you know, sometimes you operate from good faith position, but then you don't know what the other party's intentions are. And that's why it's very important, even at an entry level, to always document everything. Even if it's rudimentary, you can try do it yourself to the best capability, and then when you finally start earning, generating some sort of revenue, please do seek assistance from an attorney to assist you in that venture.
Are those implications criminal, or are they part of a civil case? For instance, you slapped with a fine. I want you to give us an example, perhaps maybe on a case, without of course giving us the names, on a case where you've worked where somebody did not do that. They started their business venture, maybe they drilled, maybe they started an operation that ultimately had some level of implication. How far can it go?
What I can tell you is that that actually happens quite often. A lot of companies do take advantage of the community, and normally there would be a penalty imposed. But what would happen is normally the community would hire some sort of representative. Sometimes they'd bring in a lawyer, and the lawyer would then engage with the mining company. And then in most cases, the mining company is then willing to settle by providing some sort of royalty to the community. And of course, that's sent to the chief. The chief has an administrative office, and the administrative office then deals with how the finances are then handled.
How regulated is the space? I know Zakiti kind of scraped about to say, look, there's a lot of legislation around it, but how regulated is the space?
Extremely. If I could explain it to just make it easier for everyone. So within the environmental space, there's the upstream process and then there's the downstream process.
Okay.
Upstream primarily deals with prospecting, exploration, the extraction of the mineral, and then downstream deals with the manufacturing and then taking it from that manufacturing process down to the consumer.
Okay.
Every step, there's a license that's required. And especially in light of climate change, everything that impacts the environment has a whole process in order for you to obtain a license.
Is this license free?
No, it's not. Unfortunately, the license is not free. The fee you have to pay to get the license normally is quite low, but then the issue is that you have to bring in environmental scientists in order to develop some sort of environmental management plan or some sort of environmental impact assessment that's done by experts, and that can be a hefty price. There's feasibility studies that need to be done in the different steps within that process. So it's quite a that's why I advise that when you start, you get as soon as you can.
Get a lawyer.
Please get it, because it's a very complicated space. Environmental law is quite muddled. It's quite muddled. They intersect quite often, and you need someone who understands it, can break it down for you, and then ensure that you remain compliant.
All right. Zakiti, you want to comment on that?
Just to share the same sentiments that Tokyo has just alluded to, that the industry is heavily regulated. For each and every activity that you want to carry out, you have to have an environmental authorization.
Okay.
That process, including public participation, comment period, it can take you about 18 months or so, because remember that when you carry out the public participation process, that's where you're asking society to give inputs to what you said you were going to do and highlighted those impacts and what you are going to mitigate. The community challenges you on all of those aspects that you have put down. And it has gone so complex such that we have seen a lot of increase in litigation on these processes that Tokyo is talking about. And for a company and the regulator, you prefer that this process runs as smooth as possible, because these are big monies involved, and when the projects take time, that costs money. And if it has to go to an appeal process, that is 3 years. That's goodbye to that investment. It goes to another jurisdiction. Having said that, we are trying to highlight that there is space, especially for young people, to come into this industry. Be experts in community engagement, community facilitation. I mean, Free State, you've had your own helium gas discoveries. So understand that industry. How can you help both the operator as well as South Africa as a whole? How do you make sure that there is harmony as we are developing energy for the country? Because we need energy. That's the truth of the matter. But we must find ways of working with each other.
Let's bring Shikongomelo into the conversation. I mean, having been a CFO of a large company that you were at, currently sitting on the board, right, of Sasol, what are the opportunities for SMMEs? I'm just looking at the financial, it feels like it's a barrier, right? And granted, Zakiti, you mentioned that there are opportunities in between the layers where young people can step up into, right? But assuming I do want to drill, assuming I'm that ambitious, right? Oreen said we must be ambitious. I'm here.
Yeah.
How do I navigate these financial blockages? How do I move around them?
Yeah. No, thank you. Am I loud?
Can we hear
Am I
her?
audible?
Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you for having me. My name is Shikongomelo Maluleke. Like Zakiti actually left the corporate full-time last year, and now I'm entering into entrepreneurship myself. It's a journey. Other than that, I've spent most of my time within oil and gas for many, many years. Back to your question, indeed, one of the barriers that entrepreneurs face is funding. And then, but before I tap much into that I'm reminded of the quote to say, don't let a good crisis go to waste,
Yes.
by Winston Churchill. Why am I saying that is, currently, as a country, we're really in a serious crisis, energy-wise, and particularly power. And then having identified funding as a biggest barrier to entry, the one need to really assess and position, and in linking from the early discussion when Pat really opened up in terms of like the real need for energy security is, as much as we have so many challenges, and the funding being a complex challenge, that is actually a fertile soil for many opportunities for young ones and all, I mean, the younger generation, and basically for everyone. The big question is, how do you therefore overcome such
Yes.
challenges? One thing that I've observed is entrepreneurs got to do their homework thoroughly. They got to do their research, understand your business model. I mean, you cannot sell a product that you do not know it end to end.
Okay.
You've got to understand the value chain. What do I mean? If you are operating in the renewables space, you've got to understand what are the dynamics. We're now talking about the regulation and the compliance. If you're on solar, residential, things have been made easier for the past 3 years. The country has been on a serious journey in terms of not necessarily deregulation, but making the regulatory environment much easier. That certain requirements like generation license, eventually it was taken away from say 1 megawatt, 10 megawatts, 100 megawatts, now completely is off. So you've got to understand what is it that you actually, like your business model. If you're in a bigger project, say wind and everything, understand what is an environmental impact assessment. Do I need to master all of that? Do I have access to collaborate? Collaboration. What does it mean? If it's much bigger projects, you've got to understand. I mean, one of the biggest sponsors, Standard Bank, they actually mentioned the ESG.
Yes.
What is it that it actually requires? What is it included there? What are these international standards? What is it for me to knock at a bank? What is it that the bank will really requires of me to really present to make my business case much more credible, reliable, to prove that actually someone is willing to put something on my business that will be able to scale up. So it's actually a broader question really to tap into it. I hope you actually, but the bottom line is the entrepreneur, in order to overcome those challenges, you've got to know, you've got to own up your business model end to end and understand what are the challenges.
Okay, I throw you a challenge. At TNA, we're able to further expand your business into the energy sector through the process of becoming an active participant within the fuel market. For example, owning a filling station. So, Tokyo, that obviously comes from your guys' social media pages. Take me through where she's leaving it. So I'm the entrepreneur. I know what is expected of me. When you guys step in as a partner, what exactly are you helping me with?
So it depends on what you want to achieve as the entrepreneur. Because especially within the fuel market, there are quite a few licenses depending on what you want to go into. If you want to deal in the supply of petroleum products, then you need a wholesale license. If you want to operate a filling station, then you need a retail license. If you want to be the owner of a site where the retail site is on, where the retailing operations are going to be taking place on, you have to be a site license holder. And so you just have to first identify what is it that you want to achieve. So for example, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you have a trucking company. And you say, no, I've now identified a gap in the market. There's an oil company I know that's manufacturing oil. And I know of a white site retailer. So white site retailer is basically a retailing operation that doesn't have, that's not associated with a particular brand. And those are the kind of retailing, kind of retailers you want to really go for, especially when you're a wholesaler, because that's basically since they're not branded, because a lot of the branded filling stations already have a petroleum product supplier in that regard. So you now want to penetrate that space, you then have to have a wholesale license. So you'll come to me, you'll say, I want this wholesale license. So what would happen is that you need a business, because now this is handled by the DMRE. You need a business plan, you need a motivation. Fortunately, wholesale, out of all the licenses, wholesale license is the most simplest.
Okay.
Because you just primarily need the business plan to show exactly the extent to which you know the industry and how you're going to execute in terms of the delivery of petroleum products to whichever retailing operator. And normally you'd need some sort of letter of intent from, especially if you're just a wholesaler, you don't have a trucking company, so basically some sort of supply agreement in place with a trucking company just to strengthen your application. But those are the kind of things that we'd be looking at.
In the room, who would like to own a fuel station? Okay, we've got, and you've got Tokyo's details. I get it. Everybody that's in the room that's looking to go into the space, Tokyo's your guide, TNA, well, it's TN attorneys, right?
TNA,
You
yeah.
also want to go in there. You want to comment on that? Please do.
Yeah. I think over and above what Tokyo has really shared in the petroleum industry, more especially with regards to the licenses, they've been a really not so a great trend where people have actually secured wholesale licenses, but they are not able to commercialize them. And then again, the question gets back to barrier to entry into the market, and because this in energy space is really a space where it requires a high capital. It's like capital intensity. So back to my initial comment to say entrepreneur ought to really do their research thoroughly and engage and collaborate where it is needed, so that when it's one step to acquire a license, but it's further more steps to make sure that that license actually you're able to realize your goal, you're able to operate as an entrepreneur, and you're not sitting with a paper that will actually not able to take you anywhere. That is very, very much critical. And as a retail license holder, for an example, where do you get the funding? Luckily in South Africa, when it comes to the liquefied market, it's kind of much more matured compared to renewable energy, as much as there's so much funding it seems to be directed at renewable energy, because one, it's a lever to combat the on the pathways of decarbonization. But nevertheless, in South African context, we're dealing with our unique challenges. Hydrocarbon will be there for some time. Pat have alluded to that. So we still need hydrocarbon petrol service stations for a longer period. In electric vehicles are coming, yes, but I mean, Volkswagen just indicated, I think 2 weeks back, to say they will only deploy in South Africa only not earlier than 2035. So meaning this market is here for some time. So this is still a fertile soil for entrepreneurs to really invest in terms of like what are really the requirements to really penetrate in that space. What does it take to really to make one being successful as a retailer? Why can't you now identify a service station, volunteer to be mentored by the existing retailer? What are the key dynamics within retail? Are you going to be a franchisee, or are you going to be a dealer, meaning you own the land, you own the property? What does it mean in terms of regulation? We have what they call RAS, Regulated Accounting System, which actually allocates in terms of like as a wholesale license, what are the margins that you actually get, which is now the oil company, versus the retail margin. What does it mean if I own the land land versus I don't own the land. So you've got to know that, because otherwise you will get a shock of your life, and that you get into the market and then you realize, oopsie, I thought it's not what I thought it is actually is. And then the departing point before I finish on this point is, one of my observations as a finance with the finance background is, I will actually quote one of my colleagues' statement that they have actually said, to say, seek funding not for lifestyle, not to service your lifestyle, but to generate multi-generational wealth. And that's unfortunately, that is unfortunately one of the barriers that we caused ourselves, and I don't mean to bring race in this case, but for our own black people, because you get into the market, you think you've achieved it, now you're going for all the lifestyle and all the good cars, good houses.
No, but
you know.
Shiko, we are previously disadvantaged.
I know, but you've got to build so that your previously disadvantaged can change to now build multi-generational wealth. Not that when a person dies, they will die with their riches and then their children go backwards. That is a curse.
Yeah.
We cannot let that happen in this day and age.
We'll come back to that. And I guess if you know some of the work that I do, you know how passionate I am about, you know, finance, money management, and being able to, we always say the skill to make money looks different from the skill to keep money, right? We'll come back to that. I want to circle back to that. I know you've got a comment. Please do go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to expand on my learned colleague's point.
But not in a courtroom, Tokyo.
Some habits die hard, yes.
Yes.
Because I can see there's a lot of people interested in pursuing, you know, owning a filling station. I'm just gonna, this one time, provide free legal advice.
Okay.
And in this regard, it's best to own both the site and the retail operation, because the site license holder has greater power in that regard. If you don't meet certain objectives within the contract, the lease agreement, then basically you can get kicked out of your retailing operation. So it's best to own both when you can, if you can.
So own the land.
Own the land, yes.
Own the land, okay, okay. Own the land, right? Own the land. That's the most important key here. Make sure you own the land. Sakiti, ESG. We see big companies greenwashing. We see, you know, people dabbling with ESG and then retreating back and saying, look, we are taking a knock on our returns and yields when we move into that direction. Maybe give us an idea of how can one integrate and put ESG in action within their energy business?
That's a tough one, Nicolette, because it's hitting home. It's what I do on a daily basis, but let me attempt to respond. You know, I always say to people, like you are saying that ESG has become topical, it's trending. Ubuntu, that's a South African term. Ubuntu, that's ESG, Ubuntu. Secondly, our constitution has so many provisions that are ESG related. The transformation journey that this country undertook from 1994, that's ESG. ESG stands for E, environment, S, social, G, governance. So you can't tell me in this day and age that all of a sudden the world is waking up, oh, we have to comply with the ESG requirements because we can't get funding. But in the South African context, that's what we've been preaching to the world, in that we have to take care of the environment. When you execute projects, you have to take care of the people surrounding your operations. You have to understand what impact your operations have on those people. Governance. I mean, our country, when you say South Africa, it's synonymous with corruption.
Fish?
You know, so all of those things are topical. There is absolutely nothing new. Yesterday, I was coaching someone who's going for an interview, ESG related. I said to them, that company that is poaching you, already they are complying with some components of ESG. You just have to come up with a strategy, understand as to which elements already the organization is carrying out, and understand what is the next phase gonna be. So it's not necessarily difficult, but it's to re-emphasize as to when we say ESG in the South African context, what does that mean? And it's no rocket science, it's something simple. Maybe quickly, Nicolette, I'm sorry to do this, but just to mention to our guests that the energy space is so exciting. You're gonna see. We thought maybe load shedding is exciting, it's topical. Look at what is going to happen in upstream oil and gas, which is an industry that I'm very passionate about. Historically, we are not known as an oil-producing country for so many reasons. However, we have been producing gas in the Southern Cape. That is Petro SA. Some of you do know Petro SA. We have been producing gas, but it's not necessarily something that everyone knows. Now, if you look at offshore, which is the ocean, starting right from at the border of KZN and Mozambique, going all the way around east-south ocean up until the border of Namibia and Northern Cape, within our economic zone. There's a lot of exploration that is happening there. World super majors are exploring for oil and gas. And 2 years ago, there was a major discovery in the Southern Cape, not too far from where Petro SA has been producing. And there are currently studies now, because the finds are there, but there are studies to make sure that the funds are of commercial value, they can be commercialized. And if those are commercialized, then it means it changes the whole energy landscape in the country. So it is exciting, and once it moves from appraisal, it goes to development, and it's just exciting space. And read up. I think Lolo mentioned this morning that you have to read up about the industry that you're interested in, but look up for the upstream oil and gas, because exciting things are going to happen. And yes, you are right, Shiko, hydrocarbons are going to be with us for quite some time because we need energy. Thank you.
And I'm going to throw it back to you. Does it compromise profits?
What?
Complying ESG, does it compromise profits?
It doesn't compromise profits. First of all, you are not even going to get funding if you do not comply with ESG. It is as simple as that. It doesn't compromise. In fact, it even enhances your reputation as an organization.
And what are the expectations in numbers? If you can give us the numbers, what are the expectations from an ESG perspective?
I would say about 1% of net profit after tax. That's more or less how much you're going to spend. But if you don't comply, cleaning up is even much worse. So you might as well just comply.
And if you're looking at a small scale entrepreneur, and I'm posing it to all of you guys, a small scale entrepreneur who's just started in the energy business, how would they be able to put ESG into action? Think very, somebody who's really just starting out.
If you are in the energy business, the first thing, stakeholder engagement, consultation, that is key. Because if you do not do consultation well, like Tokyo mentioned earlier, no project will ever take off, because communities now are empowered to take you to court, and they will take you to court, and they will win those cases, and your project will never take off. So you might as well do the consultation properly, looking after the environment in terms of what are the impacts, be transparent about those. Social, mention to people, how is this going to affect them? Governance, I mean, the industry is highly regulated. Do you report regularly to the regulator? So that's it in its simplest form. It's the cheapest way of doing business. You have to comply with ESG, because if you do not comply, well, be friends with Tokyo, really, because you'll end up in courts defending your decisions.
Shiko Kamila, you want to comment on that?
Yeah. I think to add a bit with relating to the ESG is, of course, not when we talk about entrepreneurs, not all the kind of the businesses within energy will really require a degree of ESG compliance at the same scale,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So when you are in, say, a solar business or you're distributing components, in this case, it will not be relevant much for you as you enter into this space. It becomes more relevant where there is an impact or a shift with regards to environment, social, and the governance, which is basically across the board, regardless of what type of a business. So again, take us back to the basics, like understanding the business where you actually are at. And then you don't also have to be an expert. We already have an expert, collaborate, and then make sure that wherever you get involved, you're able to have a full insight of it, because not necessarily all the international standards that are governing the ESG are relevant for each and every business at a scale. It differs. So I'm saying this so that it does not chase people
And scare people away.
scare people away that, oh, this is not an area that we want to get to get into. And the other point I needed to also touch on, that is really a great point in terms of the upstream business. The question will come to say, what does it mean as an entrepreneur sitting in a free state? They already told us that it requires a huge capital. We're talking about $1 million type of a business that will only, it takes maybe almost 10 years to develop, to explore, to see whether it can be commercialized or not, to reach financial close and all of that. What does it mean for me sitting here today? And I think there, it again takes us back to the basics, to say, when you understand the value chain, could be now starting to reposition yourself towards all those activities. It could be maybe through the consulting work, community engagement, or perhaps your interest is in logistics. That means that someone will need a truck or fleet of some sort. What do they require? How do I position myself throughout that line that the pipeline will go through and all of that, so that we don't see as a big elephant, but see it as a chunk within a value chain that will be an entry level as you advance your business to be a bigger thing, because we cannot all start at a bigger level of say, $100 million type of a business. You've got to start somewhere.
And I'm going to pose a question to you, Tokyo, and I want you to just, I'm going to leave it with you to think about it. I'm going to come back to you because you said something quite interesting. Tokyo, policy interventions that can transform this space. What do we need, right? And Shiko, just coming back to you, your network is your, what? Your network is your net worth.
Yep.
For me to be able to offer those types of services, I need to know there's an entrepreneur there doing the explorative work, right?
Yes.
That a big project is coming.
Yeah.
But I'm just Nicolette. If I'm not in the, you can't look for information you don't know.
Absolutely.
So how do I get to be part of the people that I know are going to start these big projects, so that I can look around and say, okay, maybe I can offer you safety boots, or maybe I can offer consulting. You know what, I'm good with my community, I speak Sesotho very fluently, you're going to go into a community there, let me help you with stakeholder engagement, let me rally people around, let me organize the town hall. How do I know about that? How do I know about those big opportunities?
You know the big answer to that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Preaching to the converted, because everybody that is here is actually have taken step towards your question.
I love that. So it's about asking.
Asking,
What are you busy with?
attend.
What are you busy with?
Yeah, asking. The fact that everyone is here,
Yes.
it means they have vested interest in terms of their the aspiration in terms of the entrepreneurial journey. Because the fact that you're here, you're able to connect with myself, Nicolette, everybody else, what are you up to, and everything, and that is a great ground to really collaborate. And after here, there will be another sessions that maybe, and sometimes you've got to pay. People must learn to invest in themselves. Not everything is for free. Of course, it's you pay with your time, with your financial, monetary investment. And then some of the conferences are free, some are, you've got to pay something. I think our people will need to learn to really spend time and invest, and then also be courageous to say, can I connect with you? This is, you position yourself to say, this is what I'm busy with. My aspiration is this and this. And you'll be surprised that every day, even the most successful people, business people that we consider themselves as successful, they continue into the journey of really networking, collaborating, and having the kind of that mindset to say, I'm learning every day. And regardless of whether someone is young or a mentee, a mentor, you learn, you have a new perspective in every engagement. That's how you build your network. And don't disqualify yourself. Be out there. The worst answer you get is no, but it's not no.
Yeah. I like that because often, I think Amina spoke about it, you're sitting on LinkedIn, you are you're putting yourself out to the right people. If I'm surrounding myself with CEOs, eventually something is going to land because I'm showing an interest in that space.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love that. Tokyo, policy interventions. What do we need?
So currently within the mining and petroleum space, there's something called the Mining Charter and the Petroleum Charter. So those pieces of regulation basically it's there to regulate BE, to ensure that people who were disadvantaged in the past are included in these deals. For example, if you want to apply to get a retail license, when you apply, the shareholding, basically 25% of that shareholding must belong to a black person.
Okay.
Before 2019, the Petroleum Charter was a bit more lenient in that it only applied to historically disadvantaged South Africans, and within that, white women were also included. And so what tended to happen when people would apply for a filling station or the retail license is that a lot of guys would then use their wives. And then the department, at the time it was the Department of Energy, saw that, and then they said, no, let's tighten up this piece of regulation. And then they changed it to make the Petroleum Charter more compliant with actual BE legislation.
Are we not opening ourselves up to fronting then? I'm just imagining if there's a requirement for 25% of shareholding to belong to a black person, could that black person not be sitting in Limpopo doing nothing? It's just their name there. How do we manage that?
So, although it's not implemented by all, because it all depends on which regional office you apply to, but I know
Okay.
the regional office in Gauteng, they're quite strict.
Okay.
And that each person who's a shareholder, their role must be explained and their role must make sense. So then they would look at the history, the track record of that person
Okay.
as a way to ensure that, mitigate the possibility of that person being used as a front.
Yes. Okay. Sure, that's quite interesting. Yeah, that's quite interesting. But I think, you want to comment?
Can I add?
Okay.
Yeah, and I think fronting, yes, it is a risk that is actually there. But then I think the most important thing is one thing I have seen, more especially in retail space with the oil mergers. Fronting takes many shapes, right? So one thing that I have seen that within oil mergers, they actually even tighten their own policies in a sense that if they require, say, their strategy requires black participation or women or youth, they actually make sure that you are not just a shareholder, briefcase shareholder. Actually, you've got to roll out your sleeves and be part of the operation, so that then in that way, they actually combat they put into learning some of the things that came with a BEE initially, where they were just a shareholder, but they don't understand anything about the businesses that they are shareholding at, and they're not even making decisions. They have no operational insight. If that business, for an example, has got a loan from Absa or Standard Bank and is not able to even maybe get to the break-even point, that person is almost like as if they've never been part of the deal. It's not actually empowering. So yes, fronting is there, but I think talking about Ubuntu, even the corporate world now, they actually embedding that into their business processes, ensuring that it's not just giving a shareholding to a person, but that person must be part of the operation, must be part of the decision making.
All right.
Yeah.
Zakiti?
Thanks, Nicolette. Maybe for the benefit of our guests, on the policy front, about 4 or 5 years ago, the Department of Mineral Resources put a moratorium on exploration rights applications for offshore, which is in the ocean, because the government felt that there was, well, among many other reasons, but one of them being there was limited participation by South Africans, particularly black, in the exploration activities offshore. So that moratorium is still in place, but what has since happened, currently the upstream petroleum, which is the extraction of oil and gas, is regulated within the Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act. The ministry is trying to make sure that the oil and gas is regulated separately in its entirety. And 2 years ago, the department introduced the Upstream Petroleum Resources Development Bill. It is currently in Parliament, and recently there were public hearings throughout the country on the provisions. One of the positive provisions in that bill is that the minister will have the right to ring fence certain blocks and have those on invitation. Like instead of you as company pet wanting to explore a certain block, the minister will ring fence and then say, this particular block, I'm only accepting applications from black-owned entities. However, you've heard throughout the morning that the industry, the entry barriers are quite high, especially oil and gas, so it's very difficult. I mean, even you know who the most a rich person in South Africa, they will not just go in and invest in the industry because it's high risk. 10 years exploring, burning millions of dollars, not even knowing that your find is going to be of commercial value. So, but all I'm saying is there might be opportunities for Black South Africans to come into the space on the ownership component because of that ring fencing. But outside of the ownership component, Shiko mentioned this, there are other activities in terms of goods and services where you could participate.
All right, thank you so much, Zakiti. Dumelo, if you may allow me to just invite Yolanda Mabuto, who's from Genesis Energy, and Gareth Warner, who's from Sigma Solar Africa, to just join our panel. And we want to expand the conversation into speaking more tech enablement around, our energy sector, and of course, speak renewables. So if they can just join our panel, please. It is, of course, Yolanda Mabuto from Genesis and Gareth Warner. And as you are coming through, Yolanda, I want to speak about this idea of energy transition. Are you mic'd? You need a mic?
No, I'm
Are you mic'd? Perfect. Idea, great idea, noble idea versus the ideal. What exactly are we working towards when we talk about the just energy transition?
Thank you, Nicolette. As introduced, I'm Yolanda Mabuto. I am the MD of Genesis Energy. I am also the member of BRICS, Energy and Green Economy Working Group, the chairman of South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, and the Entrepreneurship and Innovation. So back to your question, when we talk about just energy transition, we're referring to moving away from a traditional way of generating electricity into a more cleaner. I think it's been spoken a lot in this panel on how do we ensure that we take care of the environment. And when we talk about that, we are wanting to ensure that as we do the transition, we don't do it alone as private companies, as government, but stakeholder engagement really comes in that. Because when we transition, we need to transition with the people, not just as the government or just as the private sector.
And what are some of the goals?
Well, the goals are really to ensure that as we transition again, we ensure that skills and development is one of the things that we're looking at. I know from the BRICS point of view, we are busy with a center of excellence that's going to be looking at not just Free State, not just Cape Town, but Africa. But of course, we have to start from somewhere. And that also looks like having projects that are supported by BRICS, but also ensuring that we do not leave government behind. I always emphasize that as we move with the wave of change, we need to ensure that government is part of everything that we do, because they are the holders, of certain things. I mean, when we talked about regulations, we need government to do those things. So projects, implementing projects, and I think offline we spoke about these big projects are coming into South Africa. How do normal people take part on those? How do we ensure that they don't just remain a pie in the sky, but they're actually reachable? So I'm not sure if I may expand on that, or maybe you'll touch into that later.
No, you can go ahead.
Great stuff. So when we talk about those projects, we want to ensure, again, back to engaging communities. Because what we've seen in the past, we've seen investors coming in, building libraries, and people were banning those libraries because they were never, engaged. They were never, consulted. So we need that. So with these new projects, you are sitting in Free State, you see a piece of land that is deserted, or you think it might be something that can bring about a solution within the current challenge you are facing in South Africa, which is load shedding. You engage the authorities. You look at, or you request, or you research what can be done with this land. There's a company like Genesis Energy, which is a UK-based organization with operations across Africa, including South Africa, of course. These companies are here, number one, to get a footprint. Number two, they understand that they will not know the context. Therefore, they need local people to be able to come on board in these projects. So you come in, you say, look, I've got this opportunity. You have money. I think Oreen said it well, that you might not have the money, but you can have the market. So you have the land. Perhaps you don't even have to own this land. You can negotiate this land, from the authorities that have powers and say, I've got a vision for this land. We are facing a challenge. And South Africa right now is very, I would say, fragile in terms of electricity accessibility. We need people that will stand out boldly and say, I'm proposing that we do this, but you get the right people in place. You get the government, you get the companies that have big pockets, that have technical know-hows, that will be able to say, okay, take us to this, where the land is. Engage us with the leaders, the chiefs, and the whatnot. How can we move from step A to step B? Because we mentioned that feasibility studies cost a lot. Yeah. So you need companies that have big pockets that will be able to say, right, let's do a feasibility study on this and see if it's possible to build in maybe solar or wind, or rather if it's close to a pipeline, gas to power. So these are some of the things that you might think, let me think out of the box and not always blame. And I'm not saying we're blaming government, please hear me well. Sometimes we need to say, how can I support government? How can I go to the government and say, how can I work with you? Instead of saying, government, you're not doing this, because once we come with that approach, they then withdraw and say, you're on your own. We are the government, we are able to do what we want to do, but you know your community, you know the challenges, you know the pain points, capitalize on those pain points. Again, that speaks to collaboration.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. Gareth, 9.7 billion is how much the population is expected to be in 2050. Now we've got a lot of finite resources. How smart and innovative do we have to be with energy tech?
Sure, that's quite a, a big question. I think the world is going to experience, is experiencing two challenges at the moment. One is energy and the other one is water.
Yes.
So, and I think those are the two big challenges in going forward, I think, for the generations coming up. So energy, let me put it in context. The energy that is produced today in form of electricity, that technology has been around for the last, let's just call it 100 years. Solar modules, that technology has been around for 50 years. Wind turbines, I mean, you've seen them on farms back, 100 years, yeah, thousands of years if you really want to go back. So everything we're doing is based on principles that were well established years ago. And I just want to put that out there in terms of the fallacy that there's this new technology and, things can suddenly change. But at the same time, I'll say, like the solar modules, let's just take specific examples, and we all know what solar photovoltaic modules are. While that technology's been around for 50, 60 years, it's evolved in terms of its efficiency and its price. And I think Olivia from Standard Bank showed you the price of how renewable energy, and I think it was PV installations, has come down over the last 10 years. And that is very true. And the biggest part of those kind of implementations, or the cost factor, is the solar modules. So that's come down in the last 10 years. I'd say we can do a solar project. If we did one for 300 Rand, just basic terms, 300 Rand 10 years ago, that same project or implementation will cost me 100 Rand today. So it's 1/3 of the price. So there's part of the innovation is production, the economies of scale, the cost structuring of the project. So I just want to sort of put in context, innovation is also the capital innovation in terms of the cost of production. Same with the wind turbines that you see, that's also come down dramatically. It's probably 1/3 of what it is today. So what that means, and again, other speakers have talked about it, and the Standard Bank presentation was good. It just shows you that the Eskom price keeps rising, and this is really reflective around the world of the 9 billion people. So that in all countries you're experiencing energy crisis to some degree, which in most cases is increasing energy prices, and the infrastructure is aging. So it's not unique to South Africa, though we have some of our own unique challenges here. So what I want to just say is that there's innovation in the cost. New technologies, you're always playing with them, but to get something in, and I'll just talk at a base level, to get something to large scale production, let's say I come up with a new idea for a wind turbine or solar module or some form of energy, to get that into large scale production probably is a few years of R&D, of testing, of piloting, and then you have to go and build a factory or integrate it into a factory environment and roll it out. So it takes like 7 years. So the innovation comes slowly is what I want to say. But I think it's very exciting times, as the panel members have said, because coming back to the price of electricity just going up, we call it grid parity, and the price of different forms of energy generation, primarily renewable, coming down. It's far cheaper now to produce energy with renewable forms of technology than it ever has been before. And also by the same token, battery technology has also, while battery technology has been around for many, many years, as we know, it's again become much more cost effective. There's been changes in the production techniques. So there's been innovation in production mainly, and the types of technology and the way they implement batteries, for example. So, for example, that's also come down. Let's just use my 1/3 comparison over the last 10 years. Battery technology is 1/3 the price it was. So I'll give you an example. I put a solar PV system in my house, and I hope I'm not going off point here, 7 years ago, and I used lead acid batteries, which is basically what's in your car. But at that time, lithium batteries, which is what's in your phone and your computer, was just too expensive, and I knew that. I knew it would come down. So basically, my system's now end of life. That battery system's only going to last, like your car battery, it's not going to last really more than 5 years. Mine's actually held for 7, so it just shows you the technology is robust. But now it's time to replace it with the lithium-ion batteries, but those are now 1/3 of the price of what it was before. So in terms of going forward with the population, I think you've got more efficient ways of generating energy. Governments, private sector, everyone's looking at renewable and other forms of energy. Renewable, let's say, coupled with battery, which includes wind and solar, as a way forward. Before, it really was your baseload points of energy generation is really coal, nuclear, and gas. That's your core, and that's problems that we all experiencing, and I think South Africa is experiencing that more than most because our base load, our base production is coal. But because of climate change, which was focused on before, you can't get funding for coal-powered fire stations anymore, and that's from all kind of funders, local and international. So it's also pushing that adaptation to change globally from a climate change perspective.
Now, from somebody who may have aspirations to go into a solar business and very fish out of water right now, are there regulations around pricing of solar? Do we foresee any? Do we need any?
So it's a good question. So I started our business 11 years ago, and we do large-scale solar developments. But the nice thing is there isn't a lot of regulation about starting a solar business, about the solar modules. You need to comply. The solar modules that come in, and the majority are from China, a lot of them are very good quality modules, and they've got a tier rating system. So it's like, if you buy a car, BMW compared to a Toyota compared to a Kia, I mean, there's a slightly different rating system, different quality, and a similar thing applies to the solar modules. But in terms of if I want to start a solar business today, let's say put up residential or put up something on factories or hotels, there's not a lot of regulation around that. I can go and procure the modules from somewhere. As long as my team is trained, and there's some training institutions that you can easily get. And then, of course, to certify the installation, you need an electrician.
And I guess
it's really that simple, sorry.
I get you. And the reason why I asked this question of whether we can regulate the pricing, I think it was a similar trend that came out from yesterday's conversation, where you've got, I think Caritas gave us 5 different levels of farmers. And ultimately, the mega farmers, with means of production, scalability, they can swallow up the small guys. How do we make sure a similar situation does not play out in the solar business, where, for instance, if you're from a big company, you can procure those modules at a much cheaper rate because you're buying economies of scale. I'm sitting in Bushbuck Ridge, and I can only buy a certain amount of them, so I have to price myself up to be able to make some level of margin that is profitable?
That's a good question. So, for example, let's take a large-scale developer and a person that wants to do something for a farm. So farms generally need electricity for pumping water, and maybe cold storage and processing. So, for example, a bigger company or mid-sized company might not be as interested, I'm just talking practically, in deploying some system in Bloem to a farmer because I've got logistics to get the stuff here, I don't have people on the ground, I've got to get a team here, or I've got to partner with a local company. So it might be more efficient from a cost point of view that a person that's local to the area can install the system for a similar price to me, even though on the module side they're paying a slightly higher percentage. So again, there's no getting around the economies of scale, unfortunately, because most of these modules are imported. They're based on US dollar pricing, and you bring in a container. And if you only bring in a part of a container, it's going to be more expensive. But I think from a logistics point of view, if you've got a presence in the province, in the city, I think you already have a cost advantage over someone like me from Joburg, who would need to get people here
to come down
set
here.
up here. So I think you won't get it on the module side, but you would get it on the location side.
So it's a make sure you're efficient with your cost of sales, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, my view is, and again, I'm probably going off topic, but one of the solutions, I think, for the country is if government, and this will be job creation and electricity, and I'm not sure what the other panelists think here, but is if government opened up the market. What happened in the UK, they put in a feed-in tariff. So it meant like you feed power into the grid as a private residence or as a business, and they just pay you for that power you feed into the grid. So it's called a feed-in tariff. And if government opened that up here, I mean, that would be, so every house could put solar modules on, and that power that you don't use for your house, like during the day, you would feed back into the grid, and you would get credited for that. You can imagine the thousands and thousands of jobs that would create in the country for people running little businesses, installing systems, because everyone would want a solar system now, because at the moment it's more your middle upper class that can afford these kind of systems with battery, and you have to put battery in because you want to store the power. But now you don't necessarily need a battery system in. You can just put the solar modules in, feed the power into the grid, and get rebate or refunded for that. So for me, that's a massive opportunity I think government is missing. But I understand it's complicated and it requires regulation.
Yeah.
But it's worked successfully in other countries.
You mentioned a very good example. In my estate, there's only 9 houses. And for a very long time, when there's load shedding, I was the only house that didn't have power, And I just thought about how much poverty this is actually perpetuating. Because you get a big portion of our middle class that would go on social media and complain about load shedding, but it's less and less people because they've found ways around it. But the people that really need the energy are just left out into the cold. So I want you to think about that, to see what can we possibly do as a panel so that we can find entrepreneurs to be innovative, to kind of go in that forgotten middle and really just service them. But I want to come back to you, Yolanda. What are the low-hanging fruits that are available? Low-hanging fruits, we've got entrepreneurs in the room here. They want to leave here today with something.
One of the low-hanging fruits is having us here. That's number one. Because now you've got access to a group of great leaders who are expecting their environment, which you can tap into. One thing I've noted in the past is that people attend these sessions and then they keep these business cards which are being exchanged and not reaching out. And then we keep on coming to these events almost saying the same thing, but because there is no personal interaction where we can say what we spoke about, let's put it into practice. Number two, some of the low-hanging fruits I can bring into the space are through some of my association. I'm going to make just one example, and maybe some of you are aware of this. There's a competition by Milken Mutsepe Foundation. It's directed at green projects or energy projects. They're focusing on agriculture as well as energy. And I know energy speaks to every sector because it is the mother of the sectors, because limited sectors can operate without power. So this opportunity allows anyone, anywhere to say, I've got an idea. So they give you funds or grant. It's not loan, it's a grant to go and test your idea. And after testing that idea, and then the judges would come and see if it makes sense, and you would find that your idea would make it out there. But even if you don't make it to the final round, you would at least have been afforded an opportunity to take your idea from paper into something practical. And from there on, you have grown in terms of your network because you will be interacting with the judges. I am, by the way, one of the judges representing South Africa and Africa. So those are some of the opportunities that are there. And one would ask, where do we hear about these opportunities? Because we don't know them. I can't answer that, but I can tell you that when you reach out to people like myself and all the panelists that were here and everyone who is here, you will be able to know about these things. And curiosity for me is always key, but I would call it positive curiosity, curiosity that wants to solve a problem. Because we are all here because we are saying we are not happy with the state of our economy. Therefore, we need to join hands and come up with something, a workable solution that will impact not just our lives, but all our lives as citizens of South Africa.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to do a quick exercise. We've got amazing leaders that are on stage. I'm going to give you guys a budget. 250,000 Rand is what we've got. We can raise 250,000 Rand in this room. I don't know how many people are in this room, but we can raise stockfill. We are going to stockfill this thing. We're going to raise our own money. We only have 250,000 Rand, right? We want to build a business that at least by the end of next year's IEW 2024. Business isn't operational. It has broken even. It's making money. Whether it's solar, it's renewable. I want all 5 of you to give us a nugget on how to build that business. Is my instruction clear? Not clear. ESG, what do we need to do? Legal, what do we need to do? Finance, what do I need to do? You get what I'm saying? Renewable energy, which is the best thing I can go into right now. For 250,000 when we can raise, we're going to give you guys 5 minutes to deliberate, and you're going to tell us. So put together business. We even want a business name, please. Want a business name? How do I start? Where do I go? If we're going solar, where am I putting my solar? Am I offering my solar to residential, farms, businesses? What am I doing with the solar?
Okay.
You guys look so confused. Huddle up, guys, huddle up.
Okay.
Huddle up.
Are we off on this thing? No, we're not. But
Yes,
we are
they're gonna do this quickly, and then questions, and then I'm done. Yeah.
Never cautious, never patient. Never took my time with love. Never learned how to say shit. Always late before the storm.